Show me the money or maybe don't. The federal government plans to drop 6 charges against convicted fraudster Sam Bankman-Fried, including a campaign finance violation and a conspiracy to commit bribery charge. Now, as commentator Colin Rugg noted, Bankman-Fried donated $100 million during the 2022 midterms to various groups linked to congressional leadership, including Senators Mitch McConnell and Chuck Schumer. While some Republicans tried to argue that Bankman-Fried exclusively donated to Democrats, reporting on his political donations showed he donated to the NRCC as well as the re-election campaigns for Maine Senator Susan Collins and Alaska Senator Liz Murkowski.
Speaking of money in politics, conservative firebrand Tucker Carlson had some thoughts on the topic. Carlson had Jordan Belfort, better known as the Wolf of Wall Street, to discuss how Nancy Pelosi seems to have an uncanny ability to win at the stock market. Let's watch.
It appears that members of Congress consistently beat the S&P 500 in their personal investments.
Nancy Pelosi.
And a lot of others.
Right.
And Pelosi especially.
But she's the famous one.
Yeah. So how does that, is Nancy Pelosi, do you think, a stock-picking genius?
No, she has to be operating on information that's non-public. Or there's not.
Wouldn't that make her a criminal?
Yeah, but, you know, look at Joe Biden right now. I mean, look what's going on right now. Like, listen.
Do you think he's a good stock picker?
Joe Biden, no, I think he's great at laundering money, though.
Yeah,
I mean, honestly,
apparently.
From what I've seen right now, I don't get it. Like, just imagine if it was Trump who was president.
Yeah.
Well, every single day in the front page of the New York Times, the Washington Post, and every other publication would be like $40,000 check or $20,000 check from his brother. Like, it'd be game over. Cries for impeachment.
Oh, yeah.
It'd be like the world falling down. He's in China's pocket.
So Sam Bankman-Fried obviously was convicted at trial and is awaiting sentencing on fraud and a number of money laundering, a few other charges, I think 7 in total. Mm-hmm. But he will now not face a second trial on campaign finance violations, and the implication of that being
that too many important people are implicated if they follow this thread. You can't do bribery in a vacuum. You can't do illegal political influencing in a background, in a vacuum.
Yeah.
So to charge him with this is going to potentially draw in a number of people, and not just from the Democratic Party. As we mentioned, there were donations from him to multiple people, but also remember his and I shouldn't call him his partner in crime, but his kind of co-founder also was the one that kind of gave the donations to the Republican side. He gave the donations to the Democratic side to make it seem like they weren't all just trying to buy off the political system.
And which is actually, I remember some criticism from right-leaning Elon Musk kind of sympathetic Twitter accounts saying that he's never actually going to go down for it because it would take down too many Democrats, and that took on an excessively partisan lens because there was giving to Republicans as well. But there's actually maybe a kernel of truth to that, in which it's even more unlikely that he'd go down for the things that involve the elites at the highest levels of financial malfeasance. Speaking to what Jordan Belfort, that's the main character in that Wolf of Wall Street movie, was speaking to the stock successes that Nancy Pelosi and others have had. Remember, no one fought harder than her, frankly, to keep the stock reforms off the table. She went to bat for retaining the ability of members of Congress to play the stock market, saying, well, this is capitalism. We're a capitalist country. Of course, I'm a capitalist. I'm in support of capitalism. I don't think the people who set the rules for how capitalism should operate should be in the game, too. Like, the referees aren't playing the sport, right? They're supposed to be the vigilant people. If they're getting to operate on insider information and no one else is, that's a total inverse. Is totally unfair and totally wrong. And as he points out there, we know it's going on. We know the calls immediately when COVID was coming. However, a couple of them got caught, right? Republicans got caught, telling your brother, oh, drop my stock in this, buy stock in tech, buy stock in pharmaceuticals, because they knew it was coming before the markets did. And
it's not just that they have an unfair advantage in gaming the stock market. That doesn't ultimately hurt the American people. Sure, like, they're advantaging themselves using their public position, but that's a much less significant crime, in my view, than the incentives that sets up for them to pursue certain kinds of policies that might not be in the broader interest of the American public, but might be in the interest of their pocketbook. I'm always reminded when we're talking about Nancy Pelosi and how she worked so hard to prevent any legislation that would curb this sort of behavior, that Josh Hawley put forward that Pelosi Act. Remember, that stood for, this is one of my favorite acronyms of all time, stood for Preventing Elected Leaders from Owning Securities and Investments, Pelosi. I mean, credit where credit's due. And of course, as you mentioned, she worked tooth and nail to use her ability as speaker to prevent those kinds of acts from ever getting to the floor. Now, again, this is a bipartisan issue. So I saw Glenn Greenwald, he just retweeted a summary by the Unusual Whales account, which shows a full report of all the politicians trading for 2023 and how they got these enormous returns on their investment. The top trader with a 238.9% return is a Democrat, Brian Higgins. It's color coded by political affiliation. But then it's Mark Green, Republican, 122, Garrett Graves, Republican, 107, Dave Rouser, 105, Seth Moulton, Democrat, 80%, and on and on and on. And you see these people beating the stock market, beating the averages by orders of magnitude in ways that go largely undiscussed, uncommented upon, and unresolved, precisely because we don't have a real democratic lever to do anything about it in this country.
Yeah, it's a scandal and something that a few members of Congress, both Republicans and Democrats, keep bringing up, and we see no action on it because the incentives are just so misaligned, even though tremendous numbers of Americans of all political stripes, Republicans, Democrats, independents, would all agree that this is not something they want Congress to be engaged in. So Sam Bankman-Fried obviously is not getting off scot-free for his crimes by any stretch of the imagination. We're waiting for sentencing. I anticipate significant jail time for him, but we will not learn, who's on the other side of those transfers who is being attempted to influence. I mean, we have ideas about who these people are, but we're not going to see them held accountable for it.
I mean, and honestly, it's a very different underlying substantive issue, obviously, but the posture of this, honestly, is giving me flashbacks to the Epstein story that we just covered, where there can be personal accountability for the figurehead involved, but there does seem to be some limitations on how far we're going to follow these threads because of who could be implicated in it.
Business as usual.
And this, frankly, is much more widespread, I should hope, I should think, is much more widespread kind of criminality and corruption than what Epstein was engaged in.
We should hope.
And this, I caveat because you never know.
Right. Yeah.
But I should hope, and that there is still no appetite. I mean, they announced this on a Friday again, which is when you announce news that you want to bury, a Friday before a 3-day weekend, hoping that the general public won't notice a choice not to prosecute this famous villain, the most famous villain of the 2022-2023 cycle, for the very crimes that could bring down the entire bipartisan political establishment.
Yeah, of course they're not going to probe those too carefully.
Yeah. And we have been having a lot of conversations about the Biden Justice Department and corruption around the Hunter Biden story and the like.
He got a shout out there by Jordan Belfort.
Yeah, and I do wish, there were a lot more public attention and a lot more public pressure on politicians in both parties to actually be accountable for the ways in which the Justice Department historically works for the benefit of rich and powerful people, whether they be the president's son, the president himself, regardless of political affiliation.
All you can get is extremely divisive, partisan political witch hunts against specific individuals that always have some basis in legitimacy and are also wildly unfair and selective and part of a weaponized system. Both things being true at the same time, which is why nobody's happy about them.
Yeah, because look, Marjorie Taylor Greene's on this list with a 18.6% return. Ro Khanna's on this list with a 12.7% return. Sheldon Whitehouse, Democrat, with a 41.1% return. Nancy Pelosi is like number 10, 12 down on this list. She's not even one of the top.
If they were saints, they wouldn't be in Congress.
Yeah, unfortunately.
That does it for us for today, but we've got so much more rising to come in the year of our Lord 2024. What do we have? I haven't made any resolutions in particular. What are we going to do differently this year?
Oof, I saw people out jogging in the freezing cold yesterday. Kudos to them. I did so in my gym.
I've been rigorously following a new workout regimen for the last two months.
I know. Is this the year that you make your Scandinavian trader very, very happy?
We shall see.
All right. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe so you never miss any content. And for those of you who like to listen while you're on the go, be sure to look anywhere you listen to podcasts. We are available.
We love having you as viewers. Thank you for staying with us as the new year continues, and we will see you all back here tomorrow.
Bye-bye.